What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
All right. I think we are all set. What is going on, everybody? Welcome into episode number 586 of Underground Sports Philadelphia, presented by the City of Vineland. It's KB and Matt coming at you from Underground Studios. Excuse me. We got a lot to dive into from the Eagles gearing up post-bye week now for a rematch with the Chiefs. We've got Sixers basketball. Union moving on in the MLS Playoffs to take on the number one seed. And we've got a new dog in town as the PLL has assigned home cities, and Philadelphia was granted a new lacrosse team. We'll talk some of that as well. You'll get a deeper dive on the Outside the Box podcast with myself and DJ later this week, but we'll talk some a new team coming to our city. But before we get started, make sure you guys are following us on the socials at Underground PHI on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook.com/UndergroundSportsPHI, Twitch.tv/UndergroundSportsPHI if you want to watch the show before anybody else does, live on Wednesday nights like we are now. You can follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. You can follow me at KBIZZL311. Subscribe to the podcast feed on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. It does go a long way for helping us continue to reach new goals and continue to grow as a show and as a network. So subscribe wherever you get your audio version of podcasts. And, of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. That's where you get full video episodes of this show twice a week, full video episodes of every podcast on our network, live streams. We did a ton of live streams on Tuesday, which was wildly successful on the channel. So shout out to everybody that came out to those. You get clips, shorts, the whole 9 yards is on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. We're at 631 subscribers as of this portion of the episode. Let's try and kick it up. Let's try to get to 650 before Thanksgiving. That would be massive, so go subscribe. And, of course, this show is presented by the City of Vineland, and the City of Vineland Municipal Calendar features city-organized, city-sponsored, and city-affiliated events that are of public interest. The calendar, which is accessible at vinelandcity.org, is a good way for residents and visitors to build awareness, remain engaged with city government, and participate in local events. You can also follow the City of Vineland on social media via their Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube pages. Through these tools, you can stay connected to the community and get important announcements about programs and services offered by the city. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast. What's going on, Matt?
I'm living the dream.
The Philadelphia 76ers somehow find their way as the number one portion on the docket tonight as they finally get cooled off somehow by playing on that red-hot court last night. But it's brought to you by our merch partners at PHI Apparel Company, best merch partners in the game. Black Friday, Cyber Monday coming up quicker than you would believe. Next week, Black Friday, and PHI Apparel Company's got you covered. From shirts, hoodies, we got some new merch dropping hopefully in time for Black Friday as well. Checking in on that tomorrow or today if you guys are listening on audio. So go to phiapparel.co if you want to stand out in the crowd with Eagles, Phillies, Flyers, Sixers, Union, and, of course, Underground Sports Philadelphia podcast merch from all of our franchises. It's the most effective and direct way to support us and help us continue to grow. Plus, you get to rep the most comfortable merch on the planet. When you get your merch, tag us, tweet at us. We'll repost it. We want to see where you're rocking your merch from. phiapparel.co, code underground at checkout gets you 10% off any and all merch orders. That's code underground at phiapparel.co for 10% off your merch. Sixers lose, unfortunately, in an in-season tournament game to the Indiana Pacers. They're back at it, though, against the Celtics tonight, but they are still a top the NBA in terms of record and performance. And Tyrese Maxey, since the last time we talked, Matt, has taken the NBA world by storm.
Yeah, he's definitely been one of the standout stars from the start of the season. We talked about this last week when mentioned just what a strong start to the season it's been for the Sixers. It's been because in part of Maxey's leap. Don't know how sustainable some of the shooting is, but I think in general, this is a guy that we've seen improve every season that he's been in the league so far. We talked a lot. Remember when Ben Simmons was, sitting out for whatever reasons that ended up being. Kind of the difference between mentality in their careers between, Ben Simmons and Maxey and the way that Maxey approaches practice and getting better and improvement. So that's been great. I think it's made the transition from, what we were in the summer to now a lot more smooth. And it's honestly given the Sixers, I think, a lot more flexibility this season. And, it's opened up some options to them that I don't know were, available with Maxey being so good, because it means that you don't have to go out and necessarily find a true established second star. You could maybe find someone that complements the team better. I just think those were all things that we weren't considering in August when we were talking about Harden holding out. Didn't know what Embiid's future was going to be like if Harden gets traded, and we didn't even know what a Harden deal was going to look like because only the Clippers were interested in. So yeah, Maxey taking this leap has taken a lot of pressure off of, I think, Daryl Morey in the front office, in terms of having like a really narrow bridge to navigate. So yeah, it's been great. He's just a lovely, lovely player. And I'll never forget that Doc Rivers didn't want to play this guy, Can't ever leave that one go. But yeah, it's been really good this season from him. And it's the kind of leap that I don't even know if we really expected him to take this kind of leap. I think it was natural to assume that, like when Ben Simmons was out, that he was going to improve and, have the ball in his hands a lot more. And I think, too, you have to tip your hat to Harden for that, too, because he's been very complimentary of Harden and the way that he approached the game, and he learned things from James Harden. And, I think that matters, when you're with someone who, whatever your opinion of James Harden, he was a very dominant player of this last decade in the NBA. So, a young guard is going to be able to learn a lot of things from James Harden. So Maxey took a lot of those. Thankfully, he took all the positive parts and left the professionalism and the work ethic maybe out there. But yeah, it's been great for Maxey so far.
And tonight is one of those early season like big games in terms of tiebreakers. When we're looking in April and getting ready for hopefully a playoff run that goes further than the second round. That remains to be seen, but you already have one win in hand over the Celtics, which is huge. You get another crack at them tonight, and I think if you have the opportunity to have an early season 2 games in hand against the Celtics, you'll take that at any stretch. And I think when we look back in March and April, when seeding is really starting to take place, that's going to be something that is going to be looked back on if the Sixers are able to win tonight on Wednesday and have a 2-0 season lead over the Celtics.
Yeah, and I think, too, it's a great litmus test because, coming into the season, I think the Bucks and the Celtics were seen as the 2 top teams in the East, and the Celtics have looked really good. The Bucks, have struggled a little bit. I don't know that that's too shocking. They were a team that I think gave up a lot of that depth and felt like a team that was more postseason oriented rather than a team that's going to necessarily dominate the regular season. But the Celtics, I think we expect to be again in and around the conversation of Eastern Conference Finals. So it's a good test to put yourself up against this team, which has obviously has presented a lot of challenging options for the Sixers in the past, has largely been a team that has gotten the best of the Sixers. So good win last week against them. It ended up being much closer than it should have been. But I think in general, yeah, it's good to have these opportunities to play early. It always feels like we play Boston like 3 times within the first month of the season.
It's them and Charlotte.
Yeah, honestly, Charlotte is like every game that isn't every game in like March and April is against Charlotte. But it always feels like we always play Boston like 3 times within the first month, 3 weeks of the season, always. But yeah, it's good to get that test early, and I think too, like the East is maybe just a little different than what we expected it to be, and it's early. It's so early in the season that it's hard to say because you're still just barely like halfway through November at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I think again the Bucks maybe not being as dominant as a regular season team does open up a potential 1 or 2 seed, right? I think you trust that the Celtics with their team probably going to end up as one of those top 2 seeds. I think it's conceivable that the Sixers could also claim one of those top seeds. The Heat are obviously going to be around there. I think those might be the teams we'll get. The Bucks, I think, will get it together. But, we already know the Bulls are going to be blowing things up. There's going to be, I think, a little bit of a sweepstakes for some of those cast-offs. The Bucks have spent a lot of their capital.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you have to consider that they're not going to be contenders, whereas, other teams in the East, like the Sixers, Celtics, Heat, Hawks even, have some assets that they can move to further improve. The Bucks are kind of as they are for the most part.
Yeah, and I mean, after tonight, can you guess the next time the Sixers play the Celtics, man?
I looked at this the other day. I think it's like January.
December 1st.
Yeah.
And then I think the final time is the end of February.
Yeah, it's weird. it's like in football where it's like the Eagles just like played Washington and like 2 weeks later was playing Washington. It's like it's just so bizarre when that happened. I think they do the same with the Giants too.
Yeah,
near the end
this
of the
year
season.
we go.
It's a lot of times the Giants I've noticed with the Eagles too. Like for whatever reason, they'll play the Giants like week 15.
Giants.
They'll play like week 15 and week 17 against the Giants. Like that's happened a few times over the last few years. So yeah, it's the same with the Celtics, but I guess in some ways maybe that's good too. You get the a lot of times you get the pain out of the way early in the year. It's the Sixers have been a team over the last few years that have started hot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. They've also had years where they've started cold. There's been no consistency with this team, but we've seen them start off strong to a year. We've seen them start out really poorly last year because of injury and guys coming back from injury from their offseason stuff that they were working like Embiid and they had a slower start to the season last year, but it's like I do think the mood and the perception of the Sixers is a lot different now than it was even a month ago. And it helps too that I think the Clippers have struggled, and I think that's sort of given at least the fans has made the fans feel a little more positive. I don't know if that for what the organization does with any of that, but yeah, I think going forward, they're going to be again with the Bulls potentially moving on from Levine, Caruso, DeRozan. You're going to hear the Sixers in those conversations, and you're going to hear that throughout this year. And I think Maxey playing the way he has changed the nature of those conversations where someone like Levine felt like a must-have, probably, coming into the years. Maybe you don't need to have Levine, and maybe Caruso is your option. It gives you options like that.
Blue Coats legend Alex Caruso.
And exactly. Bring him home. We're reassembling the Hinkie squad to call up Nerlens, whoever else. I saw TJ McConnell the other night while we were playing, and I was like, just bring him back. Let's get the band.
I mean,
back together.
we are throwing it back to Hinkie era tonight because in your starting lineup for your Philadelphia 76ers, Robert Covington.
Yeah. Where's Hollis Thompson? We could use some sharpshooting off the bench. That'd be nice.
Where's Ish Smith when you need him?
I think he's still playing. I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure he was on the Nuggets last year.
He was. Yeah. So. Shout out to Kelly Oubre, too, by the way. Defying death somehow and getting struck by a vehicle.
Which then a weird report came out today. I don't know if you've seen
I did
this.
see that. The headline does the article no favors because the headline makes it sound like Oubre made this story up. Yeah. What I think more likely happened is that he was hit by a car and didn't quite remember Again,
new city,
a new city for him. Probably didn't remember exactly what street, especially in Center City where you're crossing over it. The headline makes it sound like this is like he was in some other thing and he lied about being in a car accident. I think he just maybe just gave the wrong intersection at some point. But glad he's okay because when you hear someone getting struck by a vehicle,
it's terrifying.
You're more worried about you're just your quality of life rather than being available to play. So the fact that he made it out with what seemed like just like fractured ribs and,
leg bruises.
Not much. Like that seems like kind of like best case scenario in a lot of ways. So glad he's all right. It's a bummer too because he obviously had such a great start to the season, and I think he was part of the reason too. Like a lot of fans felt really positive about the team. Is he's played well. He's here on like a prove it deal to try and get a longer contract. Cause
big vibes guy.
Yeah, and I think it's a bummer that he gets taken out of action in such a freak kind of thing. Like you don't even expect that to really happen. So obviously hope he gets better. But it sounds like with broken ribs, I don't know what the timeline is. He's going to be reevaluated in a week. Don't know exactly when he'll be back, but he's been a really good contributor so far this season too. And that was a signing that everyone could have had a crack at Kelly Oubre. That was, that really wasn't like Daryl Morey really thinking outside the box. Is like, well, all right, let's give it a shot. And it's worked through the first 6-7 games of the year.
He was a top 25 player in terms of production. Go before the incident happened.
Right. Is that going to sustain? No. In the same way that Tyrese Maxey is not going to shoot 43% from free this year, right? But the fact that you were able to find some kind of contribution off the street is good and is a benefit. I think it's interesting too because obviously the Sixers acquire so many kind of bench pieces through this trade too. Sixers have never really had insane depth. I don't think they have insane depth now, but it's certainly one of the deeper Sixers teams that we've had in kind of like the Embiid era.
For the last 5 years, it's pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I do think that matters too. And, you have the added bonus of Nick Nurse, who, when he was hired, it felt like, well, this team is going to be good in the regular season, under Nick Nurse, right? Like he's someone that creates buy-in and, we'll see how long that lasts. He's obviously someone that at Toronto, I think some of that magic and that spark ran out at the end. But for the time that he was good and locked in, the Raptors, despite not having amazing players, and the one time that he had an amazing player, he won a championship. So it's like, I think you have to give some credit there. So they've rebuilt a lot of goodwill. I cannot wait to see how they destroy it. Maybe it starts tonight. But yeah, I think they've turned people around for them.
I was going to ask you, you bring up Nick Nurse. I know it's 10 games into an 82-game season, but your early assessment on how you're feeling about Nick Nurse. Because for me, from a coaching perspective and just what you see, like if you're watching the games, like the last 3 years, looking at Nick Nurse now feels like we just punted like quality prime years of so many players' careers.
Yeah. Turns out off the ball movement is good.
Passing, good.
Passing is good. Yeah. I think even when you listen to like players talk about Nick Nurse, there's been a noticeable difference in just kind of attitude towards him, and I think there were some jokes made about Doc Rivers and some of the lack of rigor in some of the practicing and yeah, and even from a fan perspective, no one didn't like the Doc hire to begin with. Right. Did I love Nick Nurse from the start? Not necessarily, but I think he's impressed me so far this year. Ultimately, I think the hardest thing for me buying back in with this team is that it's going to come down to playoffs, right? Like I can enjoy the regular season and what they give me, but this team has found a way to burn us time and time again, in May. And maybe Nick Nurse could be, a positive force of change there. And I do think he is the type of coach that can like maximize talent. We saw that with Toronto a lot. And he's definitely like someone that adjusts in game. It feels like this team is much more responsive. How much of that is just like the team is winning, so automatically you feel better,
right.
If this team was like, if we were 6-4,
would it feel the same?
Right. Even though, maybe just a bounce or two goes different or something, it's just,
That's ironic when talking about Nick Nurse.
Correct. Yeah, you're welcome. But yeah, I think he's been good so far and I'm willing to give him credit. And, again, I cannot.
He kind of reminds me
they
of this. Like 2021. Like obviously it was his first crack at a head coaching job with Sirianni and the Eagles, but like he gives off like that like energy as a coach. If that makes sense. Yeah,
definitely. I think there's
like
some
he's lighthearted and like
he didn't have a disastrous first press conference where people
and he feels like easy to root for.
Right.
and like for so long we were anti-Nick Nurse because he was coaching a team that the Sixers would perennially run into in the playoffs, and the heartbreak in 2019. But Nick Nurse now being on the other side of it is complete opposite too with how Doc Rivers was, where like we hated Doc Rivers when he was the head coach of the Celtics, and he came here and it was just like, what are we doing? Nick Nurse feels like a coach that like you can root for, and it feels like a lot of the teams in this city have started to kind of find coaches like that are easy to get behind, that are also good at their job.
Yeah, definitely. It's a tough balance to strike for sure.
Sixers now 1-1 in the in-season tournament. Their remaining games are on the road, if I'm not mistaken, or do they have a split?
It's hard to find. They need like a separate tab for the in-season tournament.
It's split. Yeah. Google, oddly enough, does a decent job in
an unnamed sports score app.
Yeah,
does not do that.
So their next one is on Friday against the Hawks in Atlanta, and then Tuesday the 21st against the Cavs is the final group stage game. So I think they still have a shot at winning the group, if I'm not mistaken. We'll see how that plays out, and there's still the wild cards from each conference too. But I feel like it's funny how everyone was like freaking out, like, what even is this in-season tournament? So, but now it feels like everyone's talking about it, and I feel like that's what the NBA has wanted.
Yeah, people love to like want change and want like progression and stuff, and then like the moment it happens, get upset. We talked about it with like the 3-point line. That was the death of basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fine. Only consideration I think is to tone down the courts. I was listening. I was listening to Zach Lowe, and they were talking about like maybe instead of the full court, you just made like the runway, the color, so like it's still very obviously like you can tell just by looking at this, but it's not as harsh.
Or even like the center court, change.
Just mute the colors a little bit.
Yeah.
I think is like the biggest thing.
Like having a different logo at center court kind of signifies that too.
Right.
I was also talking to some people about this as well. I think the biggest thing that will help improve the in-season tournament is changing the name from NBA in-season tournament.
Yeah, having it like named after a player would be a good thing for sure. I know people have like thrown around like the Kobe Cup, something like that. Naming after like.
I was joking with DJ today, and he brought up Carmelo Anthony. I was like, that's perfect because Melo's the ultimate regular season player.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think there are some names that would get in ahead of him, but that would spiritually, I think that makes sense. Maybe like the group stage MVP would be the Carmelo Anthony, because he was always the group stage of the Olympics.
Yes.
He was always it was really good. Yeah. It's a little golden hoodie,
I mean, we could name the trophy after the banana boat.
You could do that. I think some conspiratorial-minded people would take some offense to that. But.
So yeah, I mean, it's more than likely. I mean, it would be hilarious because he would roll over in his grave if they named it after David Stern.
Yeah, I think Stern would like this.
Chris Paul would not play in a single in-season tournament game if it's named after David Stern.
Well, his teammates did a very good job last night of getting kicked out of games. So
what is it with the Timberwolves and them having just a getting choked out on the court fetish?
Yeah, it is weird. Well, this one, honestly, like Gobert was like not really. He was just trying to like break something up, and Draymond just really involved himself. I'm curious to see what suspension he gets from this, because it feels like public sentiment has really shifted on Draymond Green, especially in like the last year, especially like going back to the Jordan Poole incident, where people are just, I think they're kind of over it, and over the antics, and I wonder where it goes from here. But
Pat Bev said on his podcast that came out today, he said nobody likes Rudy anyway.
What's weird is like people are rallying around Rudy though, because like his comments have been really funny too. That it's like I just saw this one. If he knew how to choke. It could have been way worse. He called him a clown and, said like, that, like Steve Kerr, who like, what is he supposed to do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like, but like kind of defended Draymond. He's like, of course he did, but he also knows deep down he was the biggest clown he's ever had to coach. And it's just, yeah. I mean, this is just, I don't know. It's, we just haven't really seen a lot of that in the NBA in like recent years. I think a lot of time, like, definitely have like some tempers flare and stuff, but I can remember like Jokic pushing Morris, right? Like that was a really big, and part of it too is Morris was injured after that. But like that was really, don't really have a lot of these like big physical altercations all that much. So it was a little shocking to see that. And then there's another one in the Lakers game too. Like listen, in season tournament, people are getting heated up about it.
They want to win.
It's all about the passion.
I did see one that said us from the future sending Draymond back to 2020 to prevent 2020 from happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see what happens with the Sixers tonight against the Celtics. We'll try to keep tabs on it as tip-off is about to get underway at the Wells Fargo Center. But we'll shift gears from the Sixers to the gridiron. It's brought to you by our pals over at Tomahawk Shades, the best small batch eyewear in the game. Sunglasses, blue light glasses, you need them to protect your eyes. And some would say you need sunglasses just as much in the winter as you do in the summer because it's bright, the sun's shining. You need to protect your eyes. Go to TomahawkShades.com or download the Tomahawk Shades app in the App Store or Google Play. And when you go to checkout, after you fill up your cart, and I'm sure Dom will be getting ready to look at the snow goggles as well. That should be back pretty soon, if not already. Use promo code USP for 25% off your order at TomahawkShades.com or in the Tomahawk Shades app. That's code USP from our pals at Tomahawk Shades at checkout for 25% off your order. The Eagles and Chiefs getting set for Monday Night Football. So we get another stress-free Sunday, Eagles fans, back-to-back. And it seems like we're going to have a nice meeting of the minds as the Kelceys and the Swifts are finally going to meet on the biggest stage, also known as ESPN.
Yeah, it's started a really challenging run post-bye for the Eagles. This was the 5-week stretch that we talked about when we first saw the schedule and how hard it was going to be, and this is where a lot of the tests are. And doesn't get much bigger than this, honestly. Super Bowl rematch, and the Chiefs' defense has been as good as it has been.
At Arrowhead.
This could be one of the games of the year for sure, which means it's going to suck. Because anytime we get one of these really hyped matchups, it just hasn't turned out well. It's interesting because both of these teams, I wouldn't say the fan bases of both teams are in love with their team. I think even Chiefs fans have not been critical of, like the offensive weapons that they have, like outside of Kelce. And even Kelsey's not had a great year. Mahomes has not had a great year, And I feel like Eagles fans are pretty critical of the Eagles' offense at times and some of the defensive issues that they have. Eagles, big test against this Chiefs defense, which has really, really neutralized teams, and I think it's still gone underrated. I think how good this Chiefs defense has been. They've been a great playoff defense, when it's been time to kind of lock in and get really particular with schemes. That's been their MO. They haven't really been a great regular season defense, but yeah, it's gonna be an interesting matchup. I'm really looking forward to it. And listen, this is what's fun about being a great team is you get these big tests, these big national eyes on it. That they're we're going to be here next week talking about some kind of narrative that comes out of this game. I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like the NFL this season especially, and maybe I'm even part of this, but I feel like in general, people have treated the NFL more and more like college football, and that college football, each week it's new number, because college football, there's so much about the rankings. The rankings
even
matter so much.
BCS college football, where it's
right.
the Cowboys beat the Giants 40-0.
Right, you're doing schedule scouting and
style
stuff.
Points,
right?
Meaning a team is better than another.
It has felt really, and I don't know if that's just the take era. You have to come away each week with a take, and part of that just involves well, this week it's the Chiefs are on the rise, and it's just, but it has felt like people have really, after every week, tried to say, like, here's your new number one in the NFL, or here's our top 5, and it just, it's felt that way. And I think we'll have some discussion. I think in general, though, again, these have looked like the 2 best teams of their respective conferences, especially like most balanced, and it's gonna be a fun matchup. And listen, Eagles, I think have the ability to win this game for sure, but the Chiefs have looked mortal at times this year, and you go back to the only Eagles loss this season against the Jet, and that felt very self-inflicted. But I think could be a recipe for this game is that, a lot of pressure on Jalen Hurts in that game, force like uncharacteristic mistakes from him. We've seen that from the Chiefs defense this year. So that's going to be interesting, but the mentality of this team, I think, is very strong. And, there's plenty of people here still from the Super Bowl, and I think there's going to be that feeling of wanting to get revenge. But yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about this too with the Dallas Goedert injury. What happened last year when Dallas Goedert got injured? Devonta Smith stepped up. And I think you're going to need that, especially in this game, with how well the Chiefs have played and lacking a marquee, tight end, especially with...
You're not an Albert Okwuegbunam.
Jack Stoll, anybody? I think Devontae's going to have to step up with those routes over the middle, those underneath slant routes and being able to kind of be versatile in his route tree that we know he can be. But I think it's also going to be up to Brian Johnson to scheme him that way against this Chiefs defense. But I think if anybody's going to be an X factor to help propel this Eagles team to victory on the road against the Chiefs, it's going to be Devonta Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, last year when Goddard was out, he really stepped up in the second half of the season. Be interesting to see how A.J. Brown continues on what has been like a career year for him, historic year, honestly. As someone who has A.J. Brown in fantasy, I would love to see nothing more than to continue that. But, yeah, I just can't wait for this one. It's a pretty bad week for NFL matchups, too. Like, there's not a lot of great games. So it sucks that we have to wait till, like, Monday night for it. This would have been a great, like, 4:25 game. But, yeah, it's a good one. And like we said, the Eagles, after this, get even more tests and you get the Bills at home, and that
who knows what that's going to be.
Well, that's taken on like a whole different dimension now. The Bills losing to the Broncos, and it feels like
fired their offensive coordinator.
That's no longer just like a big matchup. That's like a must-win game now for the Bills. And they have you talk about hard schedules. They have a challenging schedule the rest of their way as well. They have the Jets, who always give them problems, beat them earlier this year. At the Eagles, at the Chiefs, home for the Cowboys, at the Chargers, Patriots at home, and then at the Dolphins to close out the season. Like that's
rough.
That's a really challenging end of season there.
That might be the hardest schedule remaining.
Yeah, the only game there that you would say is not going to be much of anything is against the Patriots. But yeah, especially at Eagles at Chiefs
that's rough.
That's tough.
And the link's gonna be rocking for that game because it's the second of 2 Kelly Green games as well.
Right.
Man, that's tough. Speaking of fantasy, you and I are now brothers in arms with our quarterbacks. Traded for Lamar Jackson this week.
I got completely off the Lamar Jackson train this year. Actually, I had a terrible time with quarterbacks this season because
same.
My one league, I got Josh Allen in my one league. I'm like a total proponent of just go get like a top 3 quarterback because it makes your life so much simpler. It's amazing what just not having to worry. And I have Josh Allen a ton of places, and it's like 25 points every week. It's a great feeling. My other league though, I had people kept taking quarterbacks like right before I went, and so I ended up with Justin Fields, which was a mixed experience. And then someone dropped Trevor Lawrence, so I was like, oh, like how lucky am I? It was okay, and then last week 2 points. So I'm riding with Brock Purdy. Somehow, it has been a journey.
The anti-agenda.
Yeah. Well, it's the Costanza, know? Like you got to trust whatever I'm feeling, trust the opposite. I'm not ready to put full faith back in Fields, but yeah, the Lamar train, in general, like in fantasy and in real life, is interesting because the highs are very high. Lamar is what I think people think Josh Allen is. You know what I mean? Like people talk about Josh Allen like he's this real like volatile, up and down. He just throws picks, and that's also because he's a guy that's willing to risk it. You know, like are there NBA players that might have a better 3-point shooting percentage than Steph Curry? Maybe, but they're also not shooting 14 threes a game. You know, like it's just he's such like a high volume, like risk it type of quarterback that pays off, and it is going to have drawbacks. But Lamar is just. It's hard in fantasy because he'll suck you in with those like 36-point weeks, and you're like, this guy's the best football player I've ever seen in my life, and it really feels that way. And then it's 10 points. But yeah, they blew. Talk about a game that they
ruined my parlay.
Absolutely should have had. Ravens would quietly have like 5 games like that every year.
Yep.
They already had a loss earlier this year that was similar. That they really should have won, and they didn't. They had that a few times. They had that terrible blown lead against the Dolphins last year.
That game against the Steelers.
The Dolphins had to score like 40 points in the second half. That Steelers game was like really egregious. They had a really ugly Colts loss. So yeah, they do that from time to time. Sean Watson out for the season with
Rip Bozo
with a broken shoulder bone. Bizarre. So
yeah, I had Trevor Lawrence as my quarterback, and in my league he had not registered a 20-point performance yet. And up until Monday night, I was still firmly entrenched in third place in my league, and then got overtaken when Noah Papiano, that scumbag, just kidding, ended up winning because Javonte Williams popped off for the Broncos. So I was like, I need to make a change, and I traded Trevor Lawrence and my second-round pick next year for Lamar Jackson with a 9th-round pick.
So you were burned by Trevor Lawrence this past week as well.
To which I traded Trevor Lawrence to Mikey Ostrowski's dad, to which he has since released Trevor Lawrence. So now I am trying to get Trevor Lawrence back as my backup quarterback for a hopeful playoff run. Behind Lamar, to which it means I only gave up a second-round pick.
I've been very aggressive in my one league with trades this year. I'm typically not a trade person, but I traded Achane and Olave for Eckler. This is when Eckler was still out on IR. I actually traded this to Dom. Shout out to Dom. Appreciate it, bud. He had Achane for a week, and then he got hurt, so sorry. And I just today really pushed the chips all in. I overpaid, but I felt like I had to overpay for this player because you're not getting this player without overpaying. I traded Jordan Addison, Raheem Mostert, Ramondre Stevenson for Stephon Diggs. I have what I will say is honestly a pretty unassailable wide receiver core. I got Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, and we play 2 flex, so I'm also able to put like Zay Flowers in there. So I feel okay. You know, I think fantasy in general, like you have to be willing to like be super aggressive. Like, did I overpay? Yes, but I'm not getting Stephon Diggs unless I overpay, and I had the depth to do it. And I actually think depth is good for like the regular season part of fantasy football, but it doesn't matter. Like, you need the best 10 or 9 man lineup that you can possibly build in the play. Like, it doesn't matter if you have someone. It's actually worse if someone on your bench goes off in week 15, right? Like, you need the most. I know, like, if I was going against my team, not trying to roster me, but like I would be like, shit, that's like there's no recourse.
That's what I'm trying to do with my running backs. I feel like I'm one running back short of like feeling very confident in my team. I have Jahmyr Gibbs, who Dan Campbell finally feels comfortable giving the rock to. My wide receivers, Devonta Smith, Devontae Adams, hopefully builds more chemistry with Aiden O'Connell and Antonio Pierce, somewhat knowing how to run an offense.
Just being not McDaniels.
And DK Metcalf, so I feel good with my receivers, and then I have Cortland Sutton on my bench if need be. But right now my second running back is Deontay Foreman, and that's not ideal.
Yeah. I'm rocking Eckler, and I'm waiting on Kyron Williams to come off IR. It's a little tight. It's a little skin after that. I got Tajay Spears starting this week. Go Titans, I guess. Keaton Mitchell, it's total dart throw. Hope that he turns into something. But yeah, I like I said, I went all in. I want to win.
And I have Kareem Hunt on my bench.
I've made championships. I've made semifinals over the last few years in leagues, and just like not been able to get it over the line. So this year I want to get some silverware at the end of the season.
I'm tired of paying to be in a group chat.
Right, like you want to win, and like you have to get aggressive. You have to be willing. Like with any trade, I think in fantasy, like everyone wants it to be like, I pulled one over on this, like these idiots. Like you have to be willing. Like you kind of have to be a little afraid to make the trade.
Yes.
Like you kind of like there has to be a feeling of like I'm not sure that I should have spent what I did for Stephon Diggs, but I also know that like it could be the different, like having like a guy who could be a top 5 wide receiver is important. So got to be willing to, I think the benefit of drafting well is it gives you an advantage in that you can then package things and get like real upgrades, because in the regular season, then when you have more information, it's easier to predict if someone's going to be good for the rest of the season. Injuries are injuries, right? Like you can't predict that stuff. That's always going to be part of fantasy, but be aggressive.
100%. And you can be aggressive if you go to trophysmack.com/underground. Upgrade your fantasy smack talk as we head into the dog days of the NFL season and fantasy football. Getting closer and closer to the playoffs. Upgrade your fantasy smack talk for your league with trophies, belts, rings, metal wall art, aka wall smack. They also have turnover chains. They got the whole 9 yards at trophysmack.com/underground to upgrade your fantasy smack talk. But yeah, Eagles Chiefs is going to be very, very fun, and we'll see how the rest of things shake out as the Eagles look to improve to 9-1, hopefully, come the end of Monday Night Football this week. But Matt, we move to the Philadelphia Union. They advance, don't have to play a third game, still have to wait some time to play their next match, but it is the thorn in the side. FC Cincinnati is next on the docket.
Yeah. Earlier this season, drawing a loss against this team. I mean, Cincinnati was one of the best teams in MLS, so hard to really get too upset about that. But in years past, this has been pretty competitive series between the two. Outside of like the Cincinnati's like first few years in the league, when they were an expansion club, it's definitely turned a corner, as they have. Top seed in the East, you're going on the road. It's always going to be a challenge. The last game these two teams played had 8 yellow cards and 2 reds, so you hope to not see that necessarily, but it's a big opportunity for the Union to kind of have destiny in their own hands too, because if they win out, they have home field advantage, or at least the potential of home field advantage in the conference final, and then if they get to a like an MLS Cup final, then they could host that as well. So it's all there for them. Obviously, the Kai Wagner stuff sort of in the rear view now. He's suspended. You did what you had to do in New England and get I don't want to say a comfortable win, but you got a win after New England had a marginal red card, I think is fair to say. A little bit harsh, but it is what it is. It's going to be a good game. We only have to wait another week and a half for it. So,
the scheduling with the MLS playoffs this year has been, to put it lightly, atrocious.
Yeah, it's bad. Nobody seemed to care for it, and I wonder. Part of it is Apple TV wanted more games, and that was part of the deal, and this is in their mind the best way to do that, but it just has not been. I think a lot of people have been really critical of it, and fairly enough, because it's really just too long of a layoff, I think, and this is when there's an international break, so you have to wait for guys to get. It's a little too stretched out.
Players have also voiced their opinions on it being not ideal either, and I think that should spark at least some sort of conversation for adjustment for it. I don't know if it gets adjusted after this year. I would hope so because it, like you said, like the layoff in between games for certain teams in the playoffs has been crazy. The best of 3 concept was wildly negative across the board from everything coming into my vantage point, and from everybody talking about it. It was just not an ideal situation. And now, the last time the Union played was Wednesday, November 8th. They played last week, and now they don't play until Saturday, November 25th.
Yeah, it's just a really big layoff. And, you have guys coming back from international break as well, and that's always, a tough thing, especially guys are playing in South America, playing in Europe. It's a long flight. The adjustment, it's just it's.
I mean, the MLS Cup being on December 9th is crazy.
Yeah, it's late in the year. I mean, it's freezing. That's the other thing, for a lot of the cities. So, I don't know. It's weird because the Union came into the playoffs with not the highest vibes. This team has let people down in the challenging moments and the final stages of tournaments and cups. So, now they find themselves in a position where none of the pressure is on them, really. It doesn't feel like, but it also feels like a loss here is sort of feels a little bit like the end of an era because this team is not going to be coming back in the same form. Don't even know if necessarily Curtin will be back. There'll be some lingering questions throughout the offseason for the Union if it ends the 25th.
So hopefully they can put some of those demons against Cincinnati to bed, because even last year it felt like it was pulling teeth playing against that team.
Yeah, absolutely. They're not an easy team to play against.
So we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. But shifting gears there, talk to you guys real quick about our official beer partner, Kenwood Beer. They've been rocking with us for years now, and Kenwood Beer, the official beer of Underground Sports Philadelphia, available in the Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, New Jersey, and Maryland areas. Just 4.1% ABV, 120 calories, just 8 grams of carbs. Go to kenwoodbeer.com, use the Kenny Finder to see who's got Kenwood Beer on tap in the Philadelphia, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Maryland areas, or available in your local liquor stores. Also, tweet at Kenwood Beer. Tag them on Instagram. Let them know where you want to see Kenwood Beer next. They are trying to get it in as many liquor stores as possible, and as many bars and watering holes as possible as well. Must be 21 or older to do so. And, of course, please drink responsibly. We got a new team in town, Matt, as the Premier Lacrosse League, which we cover in depth over at Outside the Box, obviously, has assigned their 8 teams to home cities for the first time, and more than likely sharing residence with the Philadelphia Union at Subaru Park will be the Philadelphia Waterdogs.
Interesting. So PLL was they would go to cities and have the tournaments there,
which they still will be,
but now there's a home.
But now there's a home base aspect to it, and the future plan is to obviously, have more teams in the league, be able to host, teams in those cities more often than not. But the tour-based model is still working. So all 8 teams will travel, and when they are in a city that has a team, that home city will then play a doubleheader that weekend to kind of, bring the fans out and have them on display in their home city. So the tour-based model is still sticking around, which I think is very smart. Help bring the sport to the people rather than the people to the sport. But the Waterdogs get Philadelphia, which is exciting to have the team in our backyard. We have a ton of connections with that team, oddly enough. Outside the Box did the first ever interview with their head coach, Andy Copeland, as soon as he got hired. So he has been a big-time supporter of everything we do here at Underground Sports, and we're working to get him on Outside the Box again. He's been a recurring guest, and working to get him on this show as well to integrate him with just the fans of Philadelphia. And the face of the franchise is from Montgomery County, Michael Sowers, and he's got the biggest hoagie mouth accent, and it's amazing. But I know there's a player on this team that you're going to like, Matt, because his name is Kieran McCardle. He's from New York, and he is a second-grade history teacher for his 9-to-5 job.
Respect. I do like purple. Like purple as a team color is interesting. Not many teams get to claim that, so I do like purple gray, purple black. I think that's nice. Is that the same color that they had? I thought they were different.
They were purple. They changed the dog logo
Right.
that they once were. It used to be a bulldog with a stick in the mouth. They switched the dog to a Great Dane, which I learned from the rebrand is the state dog of Pennsylvania.
I'm going to be totally honest. I didn't know that states had state dogs. I knew there were
Neither
state
did I.
birds. I did not know state bird in New Jersey is a goldfinch.
Look at that.
So that's the only one I know.
Well, Animal
off the
101.
Top of my head, to be honest.
Yeah, I had no idea that there was a state dog of Pennsylvania, but it is the Great Dane. So they switched the dog.
New Jersey state dog, a Shih Tzu.
That
A
would be
Yorkie. A
hilarious.
Yorkie really does kind of
Yeah.
sum up New Jersey, if I'm being honest. New Jersey state dog. Okay, I don't know that you're allowed to do this. The seeing eye dog is the state
No
dog.
way.
Governor Phil Murphy signed legislation that officially designated the seeing eye dog as the state dog of New Jersey. What?
That seems a little ableist.
Okay, so not every state has one.
Okay.
In fact, very few do. Yeah, so Pia is the Great Dane. Okay, we're not the only state that did this. I believe this is Delaware is rescue dogs. They just said rescue dogs. Rescue dogs are the state dog.
Paw Patrol, the official state dog of Delaware.
So at least we weren't the first to do this. Alaska is the Alaskan Malamute, so they got
that right.
Yeah, they got that going. New Hampshire. Wait, it's hard to tell on this guy. Yeah, I was gonna say it would have been really funny if New Hampshire had claimed Boston Terrier, but it's Massachusetts got a Boston Terrier. I mean, it had to be, right?
Yeah.
But, and Maryland has Chesapeake Bay Retriever. So some of these, someone's doing some good work at least, but yeah, not every state has them.
Interesting.
And now New Jersey has seeing eye dogs. Which, I mean, listen, if you're going to claim a group of dogs,
Hey,
I'll take it.
we are all encompassing. But yeah, the collar on the Waterdogs logo is in the shape of like the Keystone logo as well. And then the secondary logo is a purple paw print with cursive script, just dogs. But more than likely, it seems like they'll be sharing residency at Subaru Park.
Okay, so apparently New Jersey is the oldest guide dog school in the United States, which is called, the Seeing Eye. So, I think the Seeing Eye dog was, started in New Jersey.
That makes sense.
Which makes, okay.
Makes a little more sense.
Right, that's, okay. That's a little better. That makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
I'm happy that is a part of New Jersey history. There you go. We gave you bagels and Bruce Springsteen and Seeing Eye dogs. Leave us alone.
You're welcome for Snooki.
And
too.
Sopranos.
But yeah, I love the explanation from Paul Rabel on why Philadelphia got the Waterdogs. They play right on the water with the Delaware River right there, right off the Subaru Park. Philadelphia's made up of underdogs, and they won a championship in 2022 at Subaru Park, played for a championship last year at Subaru Park as well, fell short. So fitting the narrative of recent Philadelphia sports successes, getting to the mountaintop but not placing the flag at the mountaintop and finishing second. But yeah, very fun team. There's a lot of guys that I think are going to fit really well in this city, and the big part of the home city initiative too for the PLL is to have these players in the communities and help grow the sport in these home markets, and be interactive in schools and in the communities and stuff like that, and help really get the sport in front of the next generation. And with the Olympics coming up in 2028 and lacrosse officially being recognized as an Olympic sport, I think that's another huge portion of this. and we're going to conference play as well in the PLL now as well. So it's 8 teams, 4 teams in each conference, and the East is the most toxic thing you could ever think of. It's Philadelphia, Boston, New York, and then Maryland, with the first champion of the PLL ever being the Whip Snakes, led by Philadelphia's own Matt Rambo. They won the first 2 titles there in the East, and then the West is the California Redwoods, the Utah Archers, who are the defending champs, with a ton of Philadelphia connections on that roster as well, the Carolina Chaos, and the Denver Outlaws are now back, which Dom was not too happy about because they are replacing his beloved Chrome Lacrosse Club. They are now being replaced with the Denver Outlaws, a former MLL team. And the explanation for the Carolina Chaos being in the West from Paul Rabel was the Charlotte Hornets were in the Western Conference in the NBA for a long time, and then for the longest time, the UNC Tar Heels were the furthest team west to beat national champions in college lacrosse.
Huh. Wow. Yeah, it's. So I'm assuming they're keeping like all the team's history too. Like,
Yeah.
Right.
So each team, so Philadelphia has another championship in the rafters from 2022 with the Dogs, and
Listen, we'll take it.
we'll take it. And in 2022, that team hilariously, fits the bill of Philadelphia. They sent the rookies out the day of the championship to use the Wawa gift cards that were given to them in their gift bags for making the championship, and they went out and bought cartons of cigarettes. And when they won the championship, they were smoking cigarettes in the locker room, which was just
sometimes you just got to burn a heater.
Hilarious. Smoking Bernies in the locker room. I'm going to show you one player that I think you're going to say, yep, he's a Philadelphia athlete. This is one of DJ's favorite players because he went to the University of Michigan. Mikey Schlosser looks straight out of Delco.
I have seen him in Northern Liberties before. I'm sure of it.
Great dude. He was one of the iconic photos of the cigarettes in the locker room. And the goalie for the Waterdogs is Team Canada's goalie as well, Dylan Ward. So a lot of fun guys on this roster that I think Philadelphia will be able to get behind. And the hype video, whoever from the PLL made the Philadelphia one, bravo to you. It was the best one. Dreams and Nightmares included. Jason Kelsey's Hungry Dogs Run Faster. The Unlike Aguilar guy made the cut. The 2 years varsity. We had the Phillies fan screaming "said."
Yeah.
We had It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and I even think the Philadelphia skateboarding scene made the cut, and just a whole bunch of iconic Philadelphia moments made it in. So welcome to Philadelphia to the Waterdogs. Going to be fun to have them in town and being part of the community. And 2022's championship now goes in Philadelphia's rafters.
Very nice. We'll take it any way it comes. Don't care.
So there it is. Make sure you guys are following us on the socials at Underground PHI, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook.com/UndergroundSportsPHI. Also, best of luck to the Fighting Clan of Vineland. Have one more game before the big game on Thursday night, as they'll be hosting the school formerly known as Woodrow Wilson, now Camden Eastside, at Catone Stadium for one final postseason game, scheduled up to get ready for the big one against Millville on Turkey Day. But follow us on the socials. Follow Matt on Twitter at Matt Castorina. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Subscribe to the podcast feed on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. We are at 631 subscribers as of this recording. Let's get to 650 before Thanksgiving. Be sure to get your merch, phiapparel.co. code underground for 10% off your order. And of course, this podcast is presented by the City of Vineland. And whether you're a company looking to expand, relocate, or you're a new business startup, selecting the right location is critical to your success. Vineland, New Jersey offers both an affordable business location and an excellent quality of life. The city's economic development department is a one-stop source for moving your project through the development and approval process, and their goal is to make this process as smooth as possible and to provide the fastest turnaround times in the region. If you're considering potential locations for your operation, contact the Vineland Economic Development Team at 856-794-4100. That's 856-794-4100. Vineland, New Jersey, where it's always growing season. And big thank you to Security 21 Security Systems and Paul J. Gillespie Incorporated for their continued support of this podcast. It's been episode number 586 of Underground Sports Philadelphia. For Matt, I'm KB. We'll catch you guys on the next one. But until then, we are getting the heck up out of here, and we are signing off. Peace.